So this is a response to Void890123's video, The Madness of William Lane Craig, the Kalam Cosmological Argument. Now before I get into some of your reservations, Void, with this argument, I would like to point out that your video very much suffers from the fact that you're getting all the argument from just one article that William Lane Craig wrote, and in this article, he doesn't really, it's a popular article. He doesn't go into great details about the argument. He's only giving basic defenses of the premises, because I noticed throughout your video you complain about, oh, Craig doesn't give a justification for this, or he doesn't really explain this. Well, one of the reasons is because it wasn't meant to. It's just an article. He's only giving sort of a brief general overview of the argument. If you really wanted to critique how he defends a lot of the premises and whatnot, then you probably would do well to either look more throughout his website, Reasonable Faith, or you could just read his book, Reasonable Faith, 3rd edition. Now, anyway, on to your reservations. Now, you admit that you don't have a problem with the second premise, so okay, I guess we don't have to deal with that then. But interestingly, you have a problem with the first premise, and you give your reasons for rejecting the first premise as follows.
Now, Dr. Craig offers 3 justifications for premise 1, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. And all 3 of these justifications commit some logical fallacy. I will deal with them separately. The first justification is, quote, "It's rooted in the necessary truth that something cannot come to being uncaused from nothing," close quote. Now, I don't know where Dr. Craig learned philosophy, but there is no law of logic or mathematical theorem that says that something cannot come into being uncaused from nothing.
Nor does Craig say that there is strictly a law of logic that supports this. What he argues is that it is metaphysically absurd to say that something can come into existence uncaused out of nothing. I mean, being does not come from non-being. Something does not come from nothing. This is what he argues here. That he says it's a first principle of metaphysics that something cannot come from nothing uncaused. This is simply what Craig is trying to say. I mean, he doesn't strictly say there is a law of logic, but he's just saying that it really is impossible because it is metaphysically absurd.
He then goes on to say, to suggest that things could just pop into being uncaused out of nothing is literally worse than magic. He doesn't offer any reason why this might be the case, nor does he clarify what he means by literally worse than magic. I wonder what it means to be figuratively worse than magic, or what exactly is so bad about magic.
To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at with this. I mean, all that Craig means with this is that it's simply the pinnacle of absurdity to say that things can just pop into existence uncaused out of nothing. I mean, this is simply all that he means when he says it's literally worse than magic. He just means that it's just absurd. It's completely absurd, meaning that it's impossible.
His second justification is, quote, "If things could really come into being uncaused out of nothing, then it's inexplicable why just anything and everything do not come into existence uncaused from nothing." Again, he offers no reason why it's inexplicable. We're just supposed to take him at his word.
This is not a good objection, because I just don't see why you can't see why it will be inexplicable. Why? I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate question to ask, that if something can come into existence uncaused, out of nothing, then why doesn't anything and everything do this? Now, to counter this, you do give a scenario about why it's possible, and you say, well, because I can imagine this, it's a possible reason for why something doesn't come into existence uncaused out of nothing if things were to pass. And you know, I just find this rather strange, but, you know, I'm actually just going to quote an atheist philosopher who is here on YouTube, Sisyphus Redeemed, actually. I don't remember if this is an exact quote, but it went something like this. Just because you can imagine scenario doesn't strictly mean it's logically possible. It just means you have a good imagination. I would also like you to maybe you could clarify that argument a little bit if you ever do make a response to this. That would be most helpful. Thank you.
His third justification is, quote, "Premise 1 is constantly being confirmed in our experience as we see things that begin to exist being brought about by prior causes." Now, seeing things be brought about by prior causes does indeed confirm the premise, some things that begin to exist have a cause. And seeing lots of things that would confirm the premise, most things that begin to exist have a cause. But it's unbelievably arrogant to assume that our experiences even begin to be exhaustive. This is known as the fallacy of hasty generalization. And once again, as a professional philosopher, Dr. Craig should know better.
Actually, Craig does know better because he's not committing the fallacy of hasty generalization. What he's doing is a form of reasoning that's called inductive generalization. Now, what this is it's basically like inference to the best explanation. And what he's arguing here is that we see things, coming into existence with a cause throughout our experience. Therefore, it's a reason to think, it's a good reason to think that other things that we don't experience come into existence with a cause. Now, it's not a slap bang, deductive, it therefore follows strictly that everything else comes into existence with a cause. It's simply an inductive generalization. He's not making a hasty generalization. I mean, like I say, it's just inductive generalization. So he simply is not committing that fallacy.
So my main problem with the Kalam cosmological argument, as you may have gathered, is that it relies on unproven and over-speculative metaphysics. Of course, there is another problem, namely that the conclusion is simply, the universe has a cause. Isn't Dr. Craig supposed to be demonstrating that God exists? 1. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now where, other than in Dr. Craig's twisted imagination, do the words uncaused, beginningless, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, unimaginarily powerful, or personal, appear in the Kalam cosmological argument?
Actually, Craig does argue for those attributes, and he argues as follows, that since the universe beginning to exist would be the literal coming into being of all matter, energy, space, and time, then as the cause of space and time, this being must be timeless, and since it created time, and as the cause of the material world, this being must be non-material, must be immaterial, and it must also be very powerful since it created the universe. And it must also be personal because, well, there are only two candidates he describes in the philosophical world that fit the idea of a timeless, changeless, and spaceless being, either abstract objects like a number or an unembodied mind. Now, since numbers don't cause anything, the number 8 doesn't cause anything, it must be an unembodied mind. I mean, he actually even addresses all this in the very article that you're quoting from, which, if you haven't read the full article, which I honestly do wonder, then I'd recommend you at least read the article, or heck, read one of his works. He very much does argue for this point. So, yeah, overall, yeah, I just don't think you've come anywhere close to refuting the Kalam cosmological argument, and if you ever decide to make a response to this video, I look forward to seeing your response. Take care.